welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and tie master Anne-Marie Young. This is your Daily Dose of Happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Anne-Marie, I was just noticing as the intro was playing, and I mentioned it to you before we got started, we've had a number of people who either were late to, guests being late to the show, or they couldn't make it, or, various things happening. I kept thinking to myself, that's a really interesting, kind of an odd thing that's been going on. But it also ties into the topic we came up with.
Yeah,
because it doesn't it? Yeah. Because we talked about, why don't we talk about doing a little show on fear and the role that fear plays in our day-to-day lives? And now we all know how the law of attraction works. Anyone who's listening to this show anyway knows how the law of attraction works. Here I am talking about how we've had guests not showing up, which of course feeds into the energy of guests not showing up. And it plays on the fear that's associated with, well, another guest didn't show up. I mean, come on, what's going on here? And so it just kind of becomes a snowball, right? That just keeps building and building and building. So maybe that's a good starting point for our topic. Because, I mean, well, I was also telling you before we got started about a situation. I won't go into the details here, but a situation with the gardening business that I run, where there's one person on the team who's she's dealing with fears associated, and by the way, legitimate fears too. We're not talking about stuff that she's just making up, stuff that, she's in a very high stress situation right now, but dealing with these fears and how the fears again become a self-motivating momentum. They build their own momentum over time, and how it can be a real challenge to kind of nip that in the bud. And to say, well, there's another gardening term, by the way, but to, but to stop that ongoing building of momentum can be a real challenge. So maybe that becomes our topic today. When we're dealing with daily, day in, day out fears, how do we stop that momentum from taking us over?
Well, I think we have to spot them first, because sometimes they can be hard to even spot, can't they? Because I noticed today I went into a bit of fear. Just the shopping came, and I looked at it when I'd laid it all out. I was like, I can't believe how much that cost. And at the moment, I keep noticing that I'm concentrating on the whole shrinkflation, the prices going up and things like that. And it's like, well, of course it's going to get smaller. My shopping's going to get smaller, and my budget's going to get bigger, because every time I do this, it's like, oh, it's so expensive. That's not a lot. We're going to have to go and buy some more in the week. And so you can just see that it's going, and it's getting yourself off that. It's a tricky thing to do.
Because it's so easy to get caught up in the loop. I mean, it's not like prices haven't been going up. They've been going up for a long time, for decades, generations.
Yeah, for sure.
So why is it all of a sudden now? Well, it's because it's increased. Well, yeah, but there are also times in history where we had higher inflation than this. So what is different? And the only thing that I can see that's different is us.
It is, and it's everywhere. It's in the news. It's everybody's talking about it. So everybody's manifesting. It's a whole community thing, isn't it?
It really is. Which is what makes it even more challenging. Because our energy gets fed by our environment, right? By the people who are around us, by our experiences, by the other people who are experiencing their stuff, and they're telling us about their stuff, and they're sharing that this and this and that happened, and how isn't it terrible? And then it just kind of helps build our anxiety. And then we watch entertainment that starts to build our tension, because they want to build the tension up to tell a story. And then we watch the news, and the news is building all this tension, telling us all this negative stuff going on. And I mean, it's just like one thing after another.
It's like, get me off this roller coaster.
Right. Stop this merry-go-round. I want to get off.
Feeling a bit dizzy with it all. But funnily enough, when I hear other people talking, I notice it quite quickly. And I'll just say to myself, well, that doesn't resonate with me. That's not my belief system. Even though it is, I do notice other people, but it's catching myself saying these things.
It's important. You're right. And that is part of the skill, because the moment that we catch ourselves doing it, I think in that very instant, we're less hooked in to that system, right? we're less. I mean, it's not like we're not affected. Of course, we're still feeling effect, but the effect, it's almost like somebody took the air out of the balloon,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I experienced that the other day. There was a minor situation that happened with a couple of my employees, and they were kind of going at it with each other. They were doing it in front of me, trying to convince me that, you know, they were right, that each one was right, you know, and they're pointing fingers and all this stuff. And I'm just standing there and I'm looking at them and I'm thinking to myself, these are two great people, really wonderful people. I'm valued members of the team and so forth. And here they are doing all this finger pointing, which is not their normal nature, I might add. This is not the way they normally are. But they were actually not only doing it, but they were trying to draw me into it.
Oh.
Well, that's what, because I'm the boss, right? You know, the guy get the boss
Yeah.
on your side. If you get the boss on your side, not only are you right, but you also win. So that's the mindset.
Do you?
Well, you don't really, but that's the belief. That's the belief, right?
Yes.
If you get the boss on your side, you know, that's the win. That's it right there. So yeah, and that becomes a challenge. For me, the challenge was not buying into it.
Yes.
And just kind of standing there, and I didn't want to turn my face into a big grin, because I didn't want them to feel like I wasn't taking them seriously. But inside, I was grinning. That was my way of noticing. You just mentioned it. Noticing is the important thing to do. My way of noticing was to sit there and say, if you guys only realized just how silly you look right now. I didn't want to say that to them. I certainly don't want to insult them or anything like that, you know. But
No.
I was thinking, like, you know, what are we, in nursery school? What's going on here?
Exactly. Like when I listen to my kids argue, and I'm like, is that really worth all this emotion? Right. It's like a TV control box. Let's just let it go. And just things like that.
And I think ultimately that becomes the ultimate defense right there, because that shifts your own vibration.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I'm not buying into the energy.
Yeah, and I know certainly when I was like looking at my shopping this afternoon, it was like, well, at least I'm eating healthier because I'm buying less stuff. I'm making a lot from scratch.
Yep.
It's less to put away. It's just trying to find the good side of it. And, you know, we're fortunate enough to have this food come to delivered to our door. So just trying to think on those focus things. But, you know, when I looked at it, it was just literally that, oh my goodness, everything's getting so expensive. This is just literally just like was spiraling in my head.
I actually went to do some shopping today, and I've been switching myself over to buying organic products more and more frequently, trying to improve the quality of the food and so forth, which is more expensive. And it's hard to make myself reach for the more expensive item. I can see them. They're side by side, right? You got the red pepper over here. You got the red pepper over there. The one that says organic is, you know, a couple dollars higher, and I'm going to grab that one anyway. It's just an emotional thing more than anything else. And when I'm looking at the final bill at the end of the day, I couldn't tell you the difference by looking at the final bill. Like, what would it have been before?
Oh, really?
I'm not really sure. It's like, you don't, the only way you notice it is when you're seeing the two side by side. When you're seeing the direct comparison, that's when you notice it. But when you don't have that direct comparison going on, all of a sudden that energy is dissipated because you don't have that that contrast going on. And
also when you get home, you get to enjoy it because it usually tastes better. And you know, so you just get to enjoy your food better, don't you?
Oh, yes. Yes. It's definitely higher quality. There's no doubt about that. Yes. And the meals are tastier. Your body is responding better. Yeah. The whole 9 yards. So, yeah. But that doesn't mean that it's not hard at the time that you're dealing with it. You still have to deal with that. That's the topic of that. Dealing with that in the moment anxiety, that fear that we generate. And I emphasize that we generate it. Didn't we? How many times do we think that it happened to us? Right?
All the time.
And it doesn't happen to us. We're the one generating it. We just blame something else for it.
And I've started, like, because there's obviously I've started a new job at work, and a lot of it I don't really know what I'm doing. But so when questions come to me, I get quite fearful. And what I've kind of started doing, because it was getting quite stressful, and what I kind of started doing was like, well, this is how I learn. All these questions I don't know is how I learn. So I'm trying to reframe my brain on not having that cold blood feeling where like, oh, I don't know, they're going to think I'm really stupid. And actually just think, well, okay, well, I'll go and find that out. And I've learned something new for the role next time. So
Yeah. Yep. So once again, I think what we're pointing to is that it's kind of a mind game that we're learning to play with ourselves. As you said, one of the first pieces to the mind game is noticing that the game is on. That, oh yes, this is one of those instances where I'm making myself fearful. Then the second step is figuring out, okay, well, what am I going to do instead? How am I going to react differently? And then doing it. That's the third part. The third part is actually the hardest one. You actually have to do it at that point. It's not enough to say, well, one of these days I'll get around to it. No, you have to take the action.
Absolutely. And it can take quite a while to even get there, but you'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a cumulative effect to that too, isn't there? The more often that we take this kind of conscious approach, the more often we get the feedback, the positive reinforcement that, oh, once again, I took a positive step and I got a good result out of it. Oh, once more, I recognized what was going on. I turned things around and I got a better, the more we get that kind of stuff, that's reprogramming, right? Every time that we get that little bit, it's like a little bit of a jolt of energy that you get every time that you do that for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's so much fear in the world. If you just watch the news, I mean, I don't even watch it now, but there's so much fear. I think collectively, a lot of people are feeling that. And I think that's potentially why this just seems to be getting worse. But then you only hear the bad stuff. You don't hear the good stuff. I'm sure there's lovely good stuff going on in the world too.
There is. But again, that becomes a deliberate, conscious decision. Taking our attention away from that crazy, especially news. Yeah, take your mind off the news, folks. Even when I look at the news, I don't look at it. It's just not good for you. I mean, literally, when the little bit of news that I'll look at through the headline. I won't even go look at an article or watch a video. I'll just look at the headline. Okay, yep, that's going on. I'm done. Just so that I don't inundate myself with all that negativity, because it's just loaded with it, deliberately, intentionally, because that's how you sell advertising. Yeah.
Because there's a lot going on in your country, and you said you're trying to view a lot of the politics in a different way, and just.
Well, yeah, I've actually done that over the last few years. I have succeeded in looking at things differently, because I used to be very politically oriented many years ago, and I had to let go of a lot of stuff because I recognized. I mean, that here it is, right? It's noticing what makes you fearful and then deciding what you're going to do to shift that. I recognized it was making me fearful. It was pretty much eating me up. So
really?
I did well, first of all, for about a 3 or 4 month period, I did a complete withdrawal. I just stopped, just paying no attention at all, and did it. Actually, it was more than 3 to 4 months. It was probably about 6 to 8 months. But for that long chunk of time, I just stayed away from it. And then when I allowed myself to have a little bit of contact with it from that point on, I always went into it with the idea of, what am I experiencing right now? How much is it affecting me right now? What kind of response am I giving to it? What kind of reaction am I getting? And monitoring myself through it, so that I could be able to consume the little tiny bit that I felt I needed to have without it overwhelming me. And you do that long enough, what I've discovered, I think other people have probably discovered this too. You do that long enough and you get good at it, sort of. You develop the ability to be filtering that negative junk so well that it doesn't have the effect. It doesn't get the chance to latch onto you and create a new momentum. And then at some point along the way, you also find ways to laugh at it, which is one of the best defenses against fear, by the way. Laughing at it. And I remember pretty vividly the first few times I started laughing at the stuff that I used to get worked up about. It was not comfortable at first, but within a fairly short period of time, I was able to start laughing at my own old positions on issues and so forth. And when I did that cut a lot of the momentum out. Even the old momentum that had just kind of hung around, it really started to reduce drastically. so that today I can look at some of the political stuff, and I only look at it from very, very far away and for very short pieces of time, and only looking for things that I know are just kind of fun for me, and that's it. I just limit myself to that. And when I do it that way, I actually find that it doesn't have the negative effect on me anymore. In fact,
Really?
I see the negative effect on other people, and it kind of like it shocks me, like, oh yeah, that's the way I used to feel about this. So I'm recognizing that all this work I've been doing all these years, to the last 4, 5, 6, something like that, 7 years, to shift the way that I feel about politics is working. It's working to the extent that I don't respond to it the way I used to. I laugh at some of it. I chuckle at. I've actually had to learn to cover my mouth and not laugh out loud, in company, because I don't want to insult anybody with their political viewpoints, right?
That was
Because
my
I look
question,
at the stuff and I
because
think it's just laughable. So much of the stuff is just crazy. It's laughable.
and that was going to be my question, was how do other people react to that when they take it quite seriously in the States?
I try to be very selective about when I do my laughing. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, we don't have to be cruel.
No, we don't need to be cruel. And honestly, I think probably my best way of dealing with the people who and I recognize them really easily, but the ones who are very strongly polarized with some particular political viewpoint, I just don't engage with them. I mean, I'll change my attention away to something else or somebody else or whatever. The moment that I see them going in that mode, I'll just head off in a different direction. Because somebody who's in that kind of a mindset, it doesn't matter what you do. You can laugh, you can cry, you can scream, you can pull your hair, you can lay it on fire. It makes no difference. They're going to keep going on what they're doing.
Absolutely.
It's a very strong mindset when you're in that mindset. Not a healthy one, but strong. And a great indicator of just how good. I mean, we often complain that we have trouble shifting our mindset. Anybody who has trouble shifting their mindset should look at the times when they have had a negative mindset about something and look how eagerly they held on to that one. They held on to it the way that a dog can grab onto it with its jaws and not let go, like a pit bull or something like that, right? That shows how good we actually can be at maintaining a mindset. We just need to choose the right one.
Bang on. Yeah, absolutely. I was going to
That's the
say something
challenge.
and I've forgotten.
So yeah, now, do you have well, let me flip it around to you. I was just describing some of the things that I do. Do you have strategies that you use when you encounter things like you mentioned? It's very important to recognize the situation when it's happening. Okay, this is something I tend to be fearful about. Okay, you've recognized it. Now what do you do? What's your next step when you're doing it with your stuff?
So what do I do? Oh, it's catching it. It's catching it at that right time, and not letting it get OTT, because sometimes when you're working full time and you're a mum and it's just busy, and sometimes you don't even get a chance to catch your thoughts because you're concentrating on the next thing to be done. So for me, it's definitely trying to catch that thing, feeling those triggers that you get. And then I am quite lucky in the fact that if somebody's got a very strong opinion, I'm quite interested in learning from them. I'm very good at sitting on a fence. So somebody could be arguing for something and somebody could be arguing for the other, and I can see both sides. So I find that quite interesting. So I try not to get triggered too much on other people's issues. But when it's my own, I just have to try and think, how is that affecting me now? As you said, what impact is that having? Is this really worth going down that road for the sake of just feeling a bit annoyed with something? So it's just catching and reacting it and feeling, is this worth it?
Do you find that works for you most of the time, being able to just say, is it worth it?
Not all the time, because sometimes I'm really riled up and I'm like, yes, it is worth it. It's definitely worth it. And the old ego comes into it. But most of the time it's focusing on what's important to me, which is usually the family, is usually feeling the love.
Well, that's a great point right there. If you need a way to shift your own attention once you recognize you're caught in a loop that you don't want to be in, shift it to something you love. You identified your family. You love your family. Your family is everything to you. You shifted your attention to something that was important to you. That's going to take a lot of the momentum away from that other thing.
Yes.
Just because we can only vibrate at one vibration at a time.
And yeah, and it's I always remember the words that Louis always come out with, is focus on what you do want, not on what you don't want.
That's right. Yes.
And I do that, you know, when little niggle problems come up, it's like, okay, what do I want this to turn into? Rather than previously, I would have planned for the whole worst scenario, because then if the worst scenario happened, I would have felt prepared. And I find that so bonkers nowadays that I used to think like that. But so, because to me, that was my coping mechanism. That was my safest thing. If I plan for it, then I'm in control. I'm in control. But actually, you're not. So now that I'm able to change that perspective, I'm a much happier person.
You're also reminding me, last time Louis visited us a few weeks ago, one of the things that came up was politics. I don't remember if it came up during the show or after the show, but I remember him. I don't remember exactly how he said it, but the gist of it was he had really gotten excited about looking at people who were into politics and how it was such a law of attraction thing, and that they were so much in the step one. And I remember commenting to him, I said, yeah, and they never get out of step one. He says, yeah, exactly. He was so excited about the fact that they don't ever get out of step one.
And we've had elections recently here, just local ones, and to be fair, I didn't vote because I don't really trust any of them at the moment. But I think for me, it's like, if I'm going to focus on who's in and what they're not going to do and what they are going to do, that gives my power to them. I'll focus on what I want and what's going to happen and take my power back.
One of the most fascinating things for me, because like I said, I had a political background. My degree was in politics, political science, you know. One of the most fascinating things for me, as I was pulling back, as I was shifting my vibration, shifting my attention, was how once I had managed to pull back a significant amount, how small it seemed. Things that used to just bend me out of shape, I looked at it, you know, now or after going through that process, and I thought, really? That's what I was all excited about? It seems so unimportant. It seems so minor. And now when I look at the grand scheme of things, you know, what's going on with the world in general, beyond the news scare, beyond the politics scare, all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on. I mean, this is a pretty damn cool place to live. It really is. And once you get your attention taken away from all that, you appreciate that. You appreciate that in ways that perhaps you never did before, because you were so focused on those little stupid political bullshit things.
And that what is growth.
That's right.
But even like, I mean, I've been thinking recently, I think I watched the Eurovision Song Contest, which is a musical contest in Europe, and there was a lot of like political points going on in it, and it was half of it I just was like, we're all getting really excited over, or you know, we're all taking sides and things like that. But actually, I love the fact that the young people are kind of rebelling a bit. They're putting their view across, and maybe not necessarily in a way that I would agree with, but I love that passion.
I see it happening here in I mean, you mentioned how here in the US there's a whole lot of controversy going on, and there is. But by the same token, we're coming up on a major national election. I think the whole world knows that in November this year. And the two major candidates former President Trump and current President Joe Biden, neither one of them are stimulating any great amount of positive fervor. There's a lot of negative fervor the other direction, like, that guy's terrible or this guy's terrible. But it's like I am really strongly for one of these guys. That segment has kind of fallen by the wayside. So neither one has a whole lot of support. I mean, there's not a third choice really because of the way the American political system works. So it's going to be, do you want bad selection A or bad selection B? That's what it's going to be for most people. Which one are you going to go with? What's the lesser of two evils? So that's the way it's. But I mean, just to give you an example, former President Trump had a political rally because this is a political campaign throughout this whole time leading up to November. He had a political rally this past weekend. And he made the comment. The political rally was in New Jersey, which is where musician Bruce Springsteen is from. He is considered like the musician from New Jersey. Like he's like the king of New Jersey in a sense, kind of like Elvis being the king of Tennessee, that kind of thing.
He's a big deal.
Yeah, very big deal. And Trump, in the middle of his speech, said he had more people at his rally than Bruce Springsteen would have at a Springsteen concert. And they actually had video. And the video was making a complete lie of him. I mean, there was almost nobody there by comparison. So I'm looking at this. I'm thinking to myself, well, this is really interesting because here's one guy he's very polarizing, but he also has a very strong following behind him. And even his followers are losing interest. The video I saw, there was one person who posted 35 straight minutes of the crowd during this Trump rally. And people were just kind of like wandering away. The crowd was just kind of slowly dissipating. He's like haranguing them and he's doing his usual thing and so forth. And they're just losing interest. I thought, this is really interesting. We're in the midst of this chaotic political climate. And his own followers are just saying, so what? And the same thing's happening with the Biden campaign. In some ways, it's even worse for the Biden campaign. I mean, another thing that's going on right now, there are a lot of demonstrations on university campuses around the country over the whole Israel-Palestine thing. And very fervent. There's been arrests. There's been all kinds of crazy stuff going on with that. Even with that going on, there are huge segments of the student populations that are just saying, oh, please, do we have to do this? Just they're not buying. Don't get me wrong. They're not saying that they're in favor or against one side or another. That's not what they're saying. They're saying we're about to graduate. Why do we have to focus our attention on this? We're about to celebrate. We just finished 4 years of our time, achieving our degrees so we can go out and do our thing in the world. And you want us to focus on this?
Yeah.
It's what I'm pointing to is there are a larger segment of the population that are just saying enough already.
And I just wish a lot of that passion was used for like, when has war and killing people worked?
Well, I guess it depends what you're trying to accomplish, but yeah, I know what you mean.
I just personally can't see how that resolves an issue.
Well, if you're Vladimir Putin, it resolves the issue of I want to become emperor of Eastern Europe and eventually Western Europe and most of the world. So for him, it resolves an issue. For the rest of us, it doesn't resolve a whole lot, but for him, it does.
It's a perspective thing. It's a perspective thing, but again, it's those people who've had that power for so long, they're losing it a little, and that's interesting. This is what I'm intrigued to watch happen.
Yes.
Is people getting their power back, and I just
taking
hope
it back, really.
Yes. Yeah, taking it back, and I just hope that unity will follow it to a degree.
Well, I'm not sure if unity follows it, but what I do know is refocus follows it. Making different kinds of choices follows it.
Yes.
I mean,
I just wish people knew they had the power.
Well, I think that's what this is. I mean, you have to go through the stage of I am so done with X, whatever X is, before you're willing to consider Y, whatever the Y is. You have to be done with the one before you're ready to go on to the next one. And that's what people are saying. I'm done with this. Not
Yeah.
everybody, but a significant proportion of the population are saying, I am done. Let's find something else because this isn't doing it for me. And when you do that, when you take that stance and say, I'm going to shift my attention to something that's less fearful, that serves me better, whatever, however you frame it, you end up with a better situation.
Mm-hmm.
Here's something that's kind of cool that's been going on. This is happening across the planet. Everybody's been touched one way or another by this. The aurora borealis. It's a worldwide phenomenon right now. And it's because of solar sunspots. They're basically a huge emission of charged particles coming, being sprayed out all throughout space, but also hitting Earth and in the Earth orbit.
Yeah.
And it interacts with the atmosphere. And actually, if it weren't for, this is the reason I'm bringing this up, if it weren't for a certain dynamic about how the Earth works, it would be killing us because they are lethal particles. They are lethal. They would be destroying the Earth. They destroy all life on the Earth and so forth, except for one really interesting thing. The way that the magnetic sphere, the magnetosphere, as they call it, of the Earth works, it basically bounces off of that. The particles bounce off that and go off into space. And what we get is this visual effect that we call the northern lights or the aurora borealis.
Mm.
So this really lethal thing gets transformed into a light show.
Yeah, something beautiful.
Something beautiful.
Mm.
Now there's a perspective shift.
That is a perspective shift. I love that.
And look how many people are enjoying it.
Yeah. Because, everybody, I heard on the radio this morning, you've got two kinds of people, the people who saw the lights and the people who didn't.
Yes, right. And I'm one of those. I actually tried to go see them, and everything's been cloud cover here, so I haven't been able to see them. Like, no, take the clouds away. I want to see this.
I missed it too. And then I could see my husband was saying people are posting all over the social media that they've seen these lights. So I got up, I got my little girl up, and we drove at like 1:45 in the morning,
really?
trying to find these lights. I was like, I've always wanted to see these. We didn't find them, but we tried. So we did a little light show in the car, and that was our little bit of joy.
But how cool. I mean, what a big difference focusing attention on something like that as opposed to some of these fear-based things we could be giving our attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And something that actually could be fear-based because it could kill us. Except that it won't. Except that it won't.
But would it if you believed it would?
I really don't want to go down that path. I don't want to find out. I am very happy sticking with what modern physics has to tell us about how the magnetosphere works and how it protects us. I'm happy with that.
Yes. The universe is perfectly designed to keep us safe.
That's right. I like that. I love that very much. I'm going to just stay with that. For me, it's also a reminder, just by staying with what we love, with what feels good to us, we end up with good results.
Mm-hmm.
We really do.
Even if it doesn't always start off as a good result, like you said, it might not go to plan. It might not go the way you want it or expect it to go.
Yeah.
But it's working on your behalf all the time.
All the time. All the time. Yeah. There's like a feeling of reassurance that I find in that recognition, that understanding of how things work. Because when I think about things in that light, somehow life seems to make more sense. It makes it easier to digest because we are contrast creatures, which means we don't just need the negative, we need the positive too. That's how we balance things out in our own lives, but it's also how we make sense out of things. So I think it's part of what the whole fear thing is. When we're in that fearful state, we're essentially blocking ourselves off from the yang part of the yin, the other side of it. We're blocking ourselves off from the thing that would help rebalance ourselves and help us to interact more to our own benefit in this world of contrast that we live in.
Yeah, I like to visual. Yeah, I like to visualize it as like another, just another piece of my jigsaw puzzle of my life.
Yeah.
It's just another shape going in, and then I can
Mhm.
still build that bigger picture.
Yeah, that's true. It contributes to the picture. I guess that's what they mean when they say it's the journey, not the destination.
Must be. Yeah, makes
I have to
sense.
admit that's been a phrase that's also been a bit of a challenge for me over time. What do you mean it's the journey?
Really?
Come on, I want the destination. What are you talking about?
There's still parts of my life that I'm just like, where is the destination?
Yes, right.
And that's why I haven't hit the destination. It's like, where is it? What is it? I need it.
When we're setting our goals, when we're identifying our desires and so forth, how often do we actually say, I really want to have the journey to get there?
You don't, do you really?
Not really, no.
You might plan it. You might plan it. Might plan the journey.
Mm-hmm.
In order to get to this, I need to do X, Y, Z. It doesn't mean it's going to go to plan.
Well, that's the other piece, because part of enjoying the journey is appreciating the things that play out in their crazy, wild ways that you could never have possibly scripted if you wanted to. You could have hired a Hollywood scriptwriter and still couldn't have come out with what actually happened, because we can't always predict that.
Exactly. And don't you find that some of those really hard things that you've been through, when you sit back and look at it, it's actually just a beautiful thing that's happened. The way it just works out.
It actually,
the way this happened and this, yeah. Well, yeah, it can be frustrating, but I love looking back at that and going, wow.
Yeah. Well,
just wow.
When I say that it pisses me off, what I mean is I look at how it actually fit together in the end, and it's almost like a tug of war with myself, in which on the one hand, I'm saying, why did I have to go through all that? And on the other hand, saying, why did it have to work out so nicely at the end going that way? Couldn't have worked out nicely the other way. That would have been so much simpler, you know.
Yeah, my way was so much better.
That's right. My way was so much better. And then what's the word I want? Not frustrating. Well, it is frustrating. The hard part, I think that's what I'm getting at. The really hard part is realizing that the way it did work out was actually better. I mean, it was better than the one I had in mind. The one I had in mind, sure, was much more straightforward. It would have gotten me from A to B exactly how I wanted to get there and so forth. But the way I ended up getting there actually played out better. And then I get pissed, like, well, dang, why is it that the thing that I less enjoyed produced the better result? That's not fair.
But if it kept happening the simple way, would we appreciate that? Would we even
good question.
Enjoy it? At least we look back and go, wow, or you know, it still makes us challenge. It makes us chuckle. It might make us frustrated, but it's interesting.
Yes.
It all happens so easy. We wouldn't have that. We wouldn't learn.
I think you used the phrase, it's so interesting. I think that's the key phrase, because what are we interested by? We're interested by the contrast. And to be interested by the contrast is to be interested in the dark as much as in the light. It's to be interested by the negative as much as by the positive. That's what makes interesting.
And I think as you get older, you know, you realize your time on this planet is so short. And I find it just how it's really weird. It's like I can't describe it, but it's almost like everything is perfectly aligned. It's like it's a book that's been written in perfect formation with all the twists and turns.
Yeah.
That's how I view life at the moment.
It's a great way to look at it too. That's that 10,000 foot view that makes sense out of everything. the universal view. How does the universe look at things? How does source energy look at things? That's that viewpoint.
Mm.
Because that used to confuse me. How on earth could source appreciate everything? How could source appreciate Hitler? How could source appreciate Putin? How could a source, how could all these things be appreciated? And yet it does. Like, what are you, crazy? Come on. How can you appreciate this stuff? How can you appreciate horrors happening? How can you appreciate traumas happening? How can you appreciate, horrible things happening to people? Oh, God.
I can't answer that. I just can't answer that. I don't know how you can appreciate some of the stuff that does happen in the world. All I can do is send my love to it.
Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, is appreciating. Hate to clue you in, but
damn you, Will. Oh.
So you just explained how to do the thing you didn't know how to do. So congratulations.
There's another piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, sending the love. That is the moment you've sent love. That's the moment you've appreciated. Which means you don't have that to me, it illustrates the difference between appreciating and liking.
That's true. And it's funny you say like it's appreciating it, because I always thought it was my way of almost fighting it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm fighting that dark with my light. It never clicked that it was a form of appreciation.
Yeah.
But you're right. We don't have to like it. I certainly don't like it.
That once I finally understood that there's a difference between liking and appreciating, and that difference is really a huge difference, that appreciation really has nothing to do with whether you like or dislike something. To appreciate is simply to assess greater value to something. That's what the word appreciate means, right? I assess greater value.
I guess, to a degree.
Yeah. Yeah. So you don't have to like it. You can even dislike it if you want, or you can not dislike it. It's up to you individually. Each one of us, we get to decide. Do I like this? Do I like that? Do I dislike this? Do I dislike that? And when I realized that that's a separate expression, a separate topic, appreciating versus liking or disliking, that's when I also realized that there's no such thing as right or wrong where like and dislike are concerned. Like and dislike have nothing to do with morality. They have to do with preference.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you can't associate them if you want to. If you want to make your like and dislike about morality, you can do that. That's okay. You can do that, but it's not by necessity. It isn't necessarily that what you like is moral, what you dislike is immoral. Yeah. As many people have demonstrated in their lives.
Exactly. And I don't have to agree with what you think.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
And I don't expect you to agree with everything I say either, because a lot of people think I'm off the wall with what I believe.
And I'm one of them, and I'm so glad you are. Because I'm off the wall too. Let's have two of us off the wall at the same time. I think it's a lot more fun that way. But
I do.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So like when you were talking earlier, I don't remember what the word was that you used, but when you talked earlier about how as people, we were talking about how people are becoming more and more jaded by politics, less and less interested in it and so forth. And I think you said something about how we'll all have the same mindset or something like that. And what came to my mind as you said that was, it isn't so much about having the same mindset. It's all recognizing that it's about like and dislike, that it's not about morality. It's not about, I have to make you think my way. I have to change you in order for me to have the life I want. It's not that at all. Never was.
No. It's just, I would love it if we just didn't have to destroy each other to prove a point. I love the fact that people can have opinions. I love the fact people are different. Oh my days. It just brings me so much joy to learn and watch other people and just view the world in a different way.
And by the way,
But
it turns out we don't have to destroy each other in order to do that.
no, we really
What a
don't.
shock.
Because I used to get so jealous of people, and if people were doing better than me, and I was such a people pleaser and this, that, and the other. Now I'm just so happy for other people's wins.
Yeah. Which is fun.
So
You find that?
it's just so much nicer just to be happy for somebody else as you would be yourself.
And knowing that every time that you do that, you're actually feeding your own experience. You're putting yourself more into the alignment, to use our favorite word, with the experience that you want rather than the one that you don't want, because you're appreciating that which you would value, that which you would like.
And I just don't like sitting in uncomfortable emotions anymore. I may do it for a day or two if something's triggered me, but it's never for that long. And I just don't like feeling the resentment or the jealousy or the emotions that just feel yucky now.
Yes. I've been noticing this with the entertainment world recently.
That's got a bit bonkers as well, hasn't it?
Oh, it totally is. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But particularly in my case, like I said, this is gardening season here in the northeastern part of the U.S. So this is like the peak of the season. This is where my business is the craziest and most activity going on. We're doing the most work for people and so forth. In the midst of all that, I still want to find ways to distract myself, right? So I'll watch a little television, or I'll watch a movie or something along that line. And what's really fascinating is I have no tolerance for any of it. I'll flip something on, and 3 minutes into it, like I can see where they're going. Like, no, I'm off that, and I'll flip over something else. 30 seconds in, no, I can see where that's going. Nope, not interested. All this drama that they're playing up, all these negative situations and so forth. No, bored. I could care less. Go away. Bored. I finally turn it off. So, what's the point? Why do I even have this stupid thing on? It's not giving me anything I want. Turn the thing off. And when I turn the thing off, I find myself giving my attention to other stuff. My cat, people in my life. I haven't exchanged an email, so I send an email. Different things that I go outside to do, watching for the northern lights. I mean, I find myself, just because I'm saying enough of all the negativity, I'm going to do something else entirely. I find myself shifting my attention more to what I want, because all that attention to the negativity I'm recognizing isn't giving me what I need. It's not feeding me. It gives me the promise of a feed. It promises it's going to feed my soul in some way, but it never does, because it's not what I like.
I used to watch soap operas when I was a lot younger, and just literally couldn't miss an episode or whatever. Oh, I couldn't watch one now, even if I wanted to. They just stressed me out. It's just like, it's just so heavy. And I think the good thing about the world nowadays is that we can stream stuff that we do want to watch, and there is a lot of like educational stuff, and there's a lot of fun stuff that I watch with my kids. We all love baking and cooking, so we'll watch like Is It Cake, which is just a really fun show to watch. It makes us happy. But yeah, you're right, it's nice just going, oh no, it's not the be all and end all. We all just used to finish when we were younger and just watch telly, finish the day, have our dinner, sit in front of the box. And now there's more.
Yeah.
So much more.
The box just doesn't do it anymore. Which raises the very interesting point and question all in one thing wrapped together. Why doesn't it do it anymore? And the answer is because I chose something different. I chose something different. I kept choosing something different over and over again, to the point where I am done with that. I am so done with that stuff. If I never have to see another one of those again, it'll be too soon.
And how many of those little decisions that you've made have turned into such a good habit for you?
All of them. That's the point. Because it wasn't one decision that got made. It was like a whole, like you said, it's a series.
It was lots of little ones. Yeah.
Little ones. Yeah. That when you're making them, you don't really see anything necessarily. Nothing ever really seems to change out of it in that instant in time when you're making that little decision. This is an example of what we were talking about earlier. You have to look back on it and say, oh, that's how it all fits together. All those little decisions fit together to put me in a place where I'm liking more stuff.
Yeah.
Different stuff. Different from what I used to like.
And it doesn't have to be a big decision if people are out there thinking, oh, I just can't make a big decision like that. It's remembering it is those little baby steps that make that big decision possible.
That's right. Because those baby steps, I guess the way I like to think of it is this. You take enough baby steps and you've just taken a few giant steps.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I mean, it doesn't take all that many baby steps to make a giant step. Anyone who ever played a childhood game of Mother May I knows exactly how that works. It doesn't take a whole lot of baby steps. Oh, it's an American game. It's a really stupid one too. But the point is, when you play that game, even when you're in the midst of playing it, you can tell those little baby steps are going to get you there eventually. It's just that you have to go through a few of them in order to get there. But it'll take you the equivalent of a giant step. That's just what baby steps are. Baby steps are little small giant steps.
And going back to that whole fear topic, those little baby steps are more digestible. If you can do a little bit at a time, then the confidence will build, the change will build.
Confidence, that's another good one. I think probably the biggest challenge we face when we're dealing with these fear-based things is having the confidence that we can shift it. Having the confidence that we can change it. Because when you're in the midst of encountering whatever that fear-based thing is, the fear is strong. We talked about that at the beginning of the show. It's a very strong fear, and it seems insurmountable. It seems like it can never be changed, and it'll always be, and so forth. But it can be. One small step at a time. Yeah.
And if you don't believe it, just like you say, look back at your life. Look at all those twists and turns. Look how much the world has changed.
Yeah.
In 20 years. Change is inevitable. Embrace it.
I was having a conversation with one of my employees today. I think I told you about her. She's the one who's into law of attraction and vibration and all that kind of stuff. And we also share a love of music. So we were talking about music. She was in a band that did very well, and I was talking about some of the stuff I've done. And I asked her, had you been to the symphony in a long time? She said, no, she hadn't. I don't know about there in the UK. I suspect it's similar to what's going on here in the US. Symphonies have been in trouble for a long time and have lost a lot of support. People weren't going to the symphony anymore. A lot of symphonies have disbanded. So it's been hard times. But there's also been some good that's come out of it. Because in the past, if you went to a symphonic concert, the way Dawn said it was great. It was stuffy. You know, you had the stuffy conductor who would waddle out on stage and he'd bow to the audience, and you know, all this kind of very, you know, it was stuck up. It was all that kind of stuff. Today, it's not like that at all. Today, you go to the symphony and the conductor comes out and behaves like a human being and chats with the audience and makes jokes about something they're about to play, and it all becomes very playful and human and interactive. So that old world of you know, the stuffy, filled, you know, full of yourself approach to playing symphonies is gone. That world has disappeared entirely, and it has been completely replaced with this interactive, let's have fun playing symphonic music together vibe that is completely different from what the old vibe used to be. So in the midst of this really sad transition where a whole bunch of symphonies went away, some symphonies decided to change. They decided to adapt because they wanted to survive. And in doing so, they made a much better symphonic experience. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. That sounds amazing, actually. And by being less stuffy, it's more attractive to more people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And more fun. But that was the great thing about COVID, wasn't it? Is it stopped everything. It stopped. People had to change their ways and be inventive and just work in a different way. communicate in a different way, socialize in a different way, appreciate in a different way. It was interesting to watch. I know it was very hard for some people, but I got a lot from that.
Interesting how much of it has transitioned into the post-COVID era too, because a lot of it's still around.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for
I'm
instance,
still working from home a few days a week.
I was just gonna say hybrid jobs. I mean, that was not even a thing before COVID. That didn't even hardly exist. And now it's almost a requirement for many people. Like, I won't even get a job unless I can do at least some of the work at home. That's COVID. COVID did that.
Well, my husband's office is in Barcelona. He's able to work from my dining table and work for a company that he really enjoys.
Mm-hmm.
But he wouldn't have had that opportunity because we didn't want to move to Barcelona.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So in the midst of chaos and crisis, we find ways to turn things into stuff that we like. And we do that by initially taking those first few steps and saying, I don't like that. I want to change that. I don't want to be in fear.
Mm-hmm.
So circling back to our original premise for the show, once we got past the fact that our guest didn't make it.
And we got out of our fear.
Yeah, right. But once we got past that one, the basic premise was we deal with these fears all the time, just ordinary daily fears. And I think what we've pretty much demonstrated through the conversation today, we can overcome any of them.
Mm-hmm.
There really aren't any that we can't overcome. It doesn't matter what they are. It doesn't matter how horrific they are. It doesn't matter how traumatic they are. It doesn't matter how terrible they are. We can still overcome them.
There is nothing I've experienced that has killed me yet.
And the test that proves that is that you're still here.
I'm still here. I'm still
here.
Smiling.
Which I'm eternally grateful for, because that means we get to talk every week. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely my pleasure.
Oh, yeah. I love it. It's so much fun. I love having you and Joel and Jody Lynn to be talking with every week. It's like the highlight of my week to just do these shows. So thank you much. I appreciate that. And thank you to our podcast listeners. I appreciate you too. Just a quick note about podcast listeners. I wanted to mention this. I've been watching, I shifted our feed. Most people will never even know about this, but I shifted the feed for the podcast, because there's a feed that you have to put out to the various, the major podcast structures, the Spotify's of the world, Apple Podcasts, all that kind of thing, so that they can pick up the show, so that you can, be heard on the various devices that people are listening to your show on. I've been watching through Spotify since I switched over to Spotify as my feed provider. I've been watching the numbers, because they send you analytics, right? So you can see what's going on with your audience and so forth. And a few really interesting things have been happening. One interesting thing is, since I started running my feed through Spotify, so Spotify actually provides the feed that I send to everybody.
Yeah.
Spotify itself has been showing my episodes, our episodes, to more people.
Really?
So yeah, when I made the switch in January, I believe it was, and when I first made the shift, we were getting seen maybe a couple hundred times a month on various searches that people would do on Spotify. We're now in the thousands. We're now around 4,000 to 5,000 a month, and it's just doing nothing different. We haven't done a single thing different except run the feed through Spotify. But because we're running it through Spotify is now picking up more and more on what we're talking about, because we do these very extensive descriptions of the shows. So there's more keywords in there that Spotify can pick up on, and then send it off to the right people. And more people are tuning in, so our audience numbers are increasing. The number of people who listen to particular episodes, that's been increasing. There's a definite uptrend going on right now.
Wow.
And all of it just because I made a shift to, let's have Spotify manage the feed, instead of, I was managing it before by myself through a WordPress that I had set up. That one little change is producing results unexpected. And the bottom line is we have more listeners tuning in. So that's my long-winded way of saying, hey, listeners who are new listeners, we appreciate you as well. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Welcome. Great to see you.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, really.
It's really cool.
So thank you all very much, and we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.